The world's attention is fixed on Scarborough Shoal, a tiny rocky outcrop in the South China Sea that has become a flashpoint for international tension. Once a quiet fishing ground, it now stands at the center of a geopolitical storm, its name splashed across headlines and news tickers around the globe. Here, China and the Philippines are locked in a dangerous standoff, their coast guard and naval vessels circling each other in a high-stakes game of brinkmanship. The air is thick with tension, as every maneuver is watched, recorded, and analyzed by both sides, and by a world anxious about what might come next. Water cannons blast Philippine vessels, shattering windows and sending sailors scrambling for cover. The sudden violence of these encounters leaves crews shaken, their ships battered, and their resolve tested. Each incident is a stark reminder of how quickly routine patrols can turn into life-threatening confrontations. Chinese maritime militia ships, often disguised as fishing boats, form an intimidating wall at sea, blocking Filipino supply boats from reaching their own outposts. These blockades are not just symbolic, they cut off vital supplies, food and water, turning the sea into a chessboard where every move has real consequences for those on the front lines. This is no distant dispute, it's a daily high-stakes struggle for sovereignty and survival. For Filipino sailors and fishermen, the conflict is personal. Their livelihoods, and sometimes their lives, are on the line. Families wait anxiously on shore, hoping their loved ones will return safely from waters that have become increasingly hostile. The Philippine Coast Guard faces off against China's overwhelming military might, each maneuver risking escalation. Every approach, every warning shot, every radio call is a test of nerves and resolve. The balance is delicate. One miscalculation could ignite a wider conflict. Beijing's warships and bombers patrol the area, sending a clear message. China's claim is non-negotiable. The show of force is constant, with military exercises and patrols designed to intimidate and assert dominance. The message to Manila and to the world is unmistakable. China will not back down. For the Philippines, every Chinese exercise feels like a direct threat, a reminder of their vulnerability in the face of a regional giant. The psychological toll is immense, as crews remain on high alert, never knowing when a routine patrol might escalate into something far more dangerous. The rhythm of fishing boats has been replaced by the hum of engines of war. Where once there was the laughter of fishermen and the bustle of daily life, now there is only the constant drone of patrol boats and the ever-present fear of confrontation. The local economy suffers, and a way of life is slipping away. These confrontations are now routine, part of a sustained campaign of pressure and intimidation. Each incident is logged, each encounter scrutinized by military analysts and diplomats alike. The pattern is clear. A relentless push to assert control, met with determined resistance. Filipino officials warn of red lines being crossed. Beijing issues stern warnings in return. Diplomatic channels are flooded with protests and counter-protests, but solutions remain elusive. The rhetoric grows sharper, and the stakes grow higher with every passing day. The world watches, wondering if this is the moment the standoff explodes. Newsrooms from Washington to Tokyo track every development, while analysts debate the risks of escalation and the possibility of war. The crisis at Scarborough Shoal is no longer just a regional issue. It's a global concern. The waters churn with tension, the threat of conflict drawing in nations far beyond the region. The United States, Japan, Australia, and others have all voiced concern, sending ships and statements in support of freedom of navigation. The South China Sea has become a stage for great power rivalry, with Scarborough Shoal at its heart. Scarborough Shoal has become the epicenter of a crisis that could reshape the Indo-Pacific. As the sun rises over these contested waters, the world holds its breath, hoping for peace, but preparing for the possibility of conflict. The next headline from this tense frontier could change the course of history. The latest flashpoint, China's announcement of a national nature reserve at Scarborough Shoal. Manila sees this not as conservation, but as a calculated move to legitimize China's presence and tighten its grip. Protests erupt in the Philippines, with activists calling the reserve a Trojan horse for occupation. Filipino leaders denounce the move as a violation of sovereignty and international law. The shoal lies well within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Declaring it a Chinese park is both absurd and provocative. Manila fears this is just the first step toward permanent Chinese infrastructure and military presence. Civilian-sounding labels like research station or nature reserve have become code for creeping control. The so-called reserve is about power, not protection. For the Philippines, the South China Sea is more than just a stretch of water. It's a lifeline for millions, home to rich fishing grounds, vital shipping lanes, and a source of national pride. Generations of Filipino fishermen have relied on these waters for their livelihoods, and the coastline is deeply woven into the country's identity. But now, China's so-called nature reserve plan for Scarborough Shoal feels all too familiar to many Filipinos. It's a move straight from a well-worn playbook, one that Manila has seen before, and one that has left deep scars. Back in the 1990s, China began by building what it called fishermen's shelters on Mischief Reef. At the time, Chinese officials assured the world that these structures were purely for humanitarian purposes, offering refuge to fishermen caught in storms. They promised there was no military intent, no hidden agenda. But over the years, those modest shelters quietly expanded. What started as small outposts slowly transformed into a sprawling military base, complete with long runways, radar domes, and anti-aircraft systems. The world watched as civilian structures morphed into formidable fortresses. The transformation was slow but relentless. Each new building, each new runway, a step further from the original promise. By the time the world realized what was happening, the reef had become a stronghold, and the status quo was impossible to reverse. Today, Mischief Reef stands as a stark symbol of China's strategy: occupy, build, militarize, and then deny any wrongdoing until the facts on the ground are unchangeable. This history is not just a distant memory. It's a warning that haunts Manila's leaders and ordinary citizens alike. So when China now speaks of conservation and environmental protection at Scarborough Shoal, Filipinos hear echoes of those broken promises. They remember how assurances of peace and cooperation masked a slow, calculated campaign of expansion. To many, the nature reserve is just the first step in a familiar pattern, one that begins with civilian projects and ends with military outposts. It's a campaign to turn contested waters into permanent strongholds, changing the facts on the ground while the world debates. The alarm bells are loud and clear in the Philippines, because people know exactly what's at stake. For fishermen, it's their way of life. For the nation, it's sovereignty and security. For the region, it's the delicate balance of peace. If the world looks away again, if history repeats itself, Scarborough Shoal could soon become the next fortified outpost, another piece of the South China Sea lost to militarization. The stakes are high, and the region's security balance truly hangs in the balance. What happens next will shape not just the future of the Philippines, but the entire Indo-Pacific. In 2016, the Philippines won a landmark legal victory at The Hague. The tribunal ruled China's sweeping claims in the South China Sea had no basis in law. Scarborough Shoal and Mischief Reef were affirmed as part of the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. But Beijing rejected the ruling outright, calling it a mere piece of paper. China doubled down, building more bases and blocking Filipino fishermen as before. The legal win provided moral clarity, but no enforcement. International law proved powerless against China's resolve. The victory was hollow, rights on paper, but not on the water. The standoff continues with law and force in direct collision. Scarborough Shoal is more than a disputed reef. It's a lifeline for Filipino fishermen, a place where generations have cast their nets and built their lives. For many, these waters are not just a source of income, but a home, a tradition, and a symbol of hope for the future. The shoal's turquoise expanse, teeming with marine life, has long been a sanctuary for those who depend on the sea. It's also a powerful symbol of national pride. The rich waters of Scarborough Shoal sustain thousands of families along the Philippine coast, providing food, work, and a sense of belonging. Every fish caught here helps put meals on tables and keeps local communities alive. The connection between the people and the shoal runs deep, woven into the fabric of daily life. But the shoal's importance goes beyond livelihoods. Its strategic location is critical for Philippine defense, acting as a natural barrier and early warning post for the nation's security. China's blockade has devastated local livelihoods, leaving boats idle and families struggling to survive. The blockade is not just an economic blow, it's a direct challenge to the Philippines' ability to protect its own people. The blockade also threatens Luzon's security, putting the heart of the Philippines within reach of foreign forces. For Beijing, controlling the shoal is about more than fishing rights. It's about completing a strategic triangle that would give China a commanding position in the South China Sea, allowing it to project power across the region. With this triangle, China could dominate vital shipping lanes, monitor military movements, and influence the flow of global trade. The fate of Scarborough Shoal is a test of sovereignty, not just for the Philippines, but for every nation that values freedom of navigation and the rule of law at sea. For the Philippines, defending the shoal is about dignity and the right to determine its own future. If China builds a military base here, its reach will extend far beyond the shoal itself, threatening Manila, U.S. forces stationed in the region, and the security of international shipping routes that connect Asia to the world. The fight over Scarborough Shoal is about more than territory. It's about national survival, the preservation of a way of life, and the balance of power in Asia. Preventing a Chinese outpost here has become a top priority for both Manila and Washington, as the stakes extend far beyond the Philippines' shores. The world is watching as the Philippines and its allies work to defend the shoal. Scarborough Shoal is now a flashpoint with global consequences, a small reef whose fate could shape the future of the entire region. In the struggle for Scarborough Shoal, the stakes are high, not just for those who fish its waters, but for the peace and stability of the world's most vital sea lanes. At sea, China's weapon of choice is the water cannon, less lethal than guns, but brutally effective. High-pressure jets shatter glass, damage ships, and injure Filipino crew. The goal: intimidate, damage, and force Philippine vessels to retreat without firing a shot. Fishermen face terrifying assaults, many too scared to return to their ancestral waters. China uses Coast Guard and militia ships to maintain plausible deniability, framing aggression as law enforcement. This gray zone tactic asserts dominance while avoiding outright war. Each blast is a physical assertion of sovereignty. China is in control, and the Philippines is reminded of the power imbalance. Legal rights mean little against raw force. The water cannon is a message: challenge China, and you'll pay the price. The Philippines is fighting back with a new strategy of assertive defiance. Manila now publicizes every Chinese provocation. Photos, videos, and detailed reports flood the media. The goal: expose China's actions, rally global support, and counter Beijing's narrative. Diplomatically, the Philippines files protest after protest, building a record of resistance. President Marcos Jr. has revitalized the U.S. alliance, expanding military cooperation and access to bases. Military modernization is underway, with new ships, aircraft, and joint drills with allies. These moves send a clear signal: Manila will not be pushed out of its own waters. Quiet diplomacy has failed. A robust, proactive stance is now essential. The stakes are high, but the Philippines is drawing its own red lines. The Philippines has strong backing from Western allies. The US and partners like Australia, Japan, and the EU condemn China's actions and conduct joint exercises in the region. This support is a vital deterrent, but it comes mostly from distant friends. Closer to home, ASEAN unity is elusive. Some neighbors fear angering China and stay silent. The lack of a united regional front leaves Manila exposed, fueling Beijing's claims that the Philippines is a US pawn. A strong ASEAN response would be powerful but remains out of reach. For now, the Philippines relies on Western support while its neighbors watch warily. The crisis exposes both the strength and limits of international solidarity. Scarborough Shoal stands at the crossroads of law and power. The Philippines champions a rules-based order, but China asserts might over right. If Beijing cements control, it will show that legal victories mean little without force to back them up. The world's response will set a precedent for territorial disputes everywhere. Will the international community defend the rule of law or let power redraw the map? The answer will shape the Indo-Pacific and the future of global order. Silence now could mean conflict later.